You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning. I am Sister Lavina Francis Pamet. I am your host for Dare to Love, and Dare to Love Show is a program that cultivates vocation awareness in the Archdiocese of Chicago through our discussion of topics related to vocation discernment and promotion. And for this show, we are highlighting the 150th anniversary of the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, Illinois. And today's special guest, we have Sister Beth Murphy with us, who is the communicator for her congregation, the Dominican Sisters of Springfield. Welcome, Sister Beth.
Thank you, Sister Lavina. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
And Sister Beth, if you can just briefly tell us about yourself. So as I said, you're the communicator for the community, and also if you can just provide us a little bit about yourself. Your ministry right now is communications, but beyond that, how did you first, when did you meet the community? How did you get to be part of the community? And then perhaps, what would be with this 150th anniversary, what are your hopes?
Well, thank you, Lavina. I grew up not too far from where you are right now in Joliet, Illinois, a different diocese. I'm the 8th of 10 children of Mary, Margaret, and John Murphy.
Wow.
I went to Providence High School in New Lenox, which would also perhaps be familiar to many of the people in your listening audience. And I met the Dominican Sisters when I was in college, my junior year. 3 of my friends and I decided to make a retreat weekend. It was called Koinonia. And that was my very first encounter with 2 Springfield Dominican Sisters. And as they like to say, it was the beginning of the end, or the rest is history. I guess either one of those works. So
that's great.
That's how I met them.
Yeah. So right now you're celebrating, really, it started last year, I believe, your 150th anniversary, right?
Yes. The actual 150th anniversary date is this August 19th. But that's a big thing to celebrate. So we started on August 19th of 2022 with a year of celebration. And we will be concluding, or as we like to say, getting ready to march into our next 150th years with a celebratory public mass at our mother house, Sacred Heart Convent Chapel in Springfield on August 19th this year.
That's great. Now, when I watched that video that we made the introduction for, I noticed that, you were showing 2, I would presume 2 sisters. Can you just briefly explain, so I can see, I went to a Dominican high school, and so I recognized the white habit, and so I can see that the sister that's walking is wearing that Dominican habit, and then another person wearing, I believe, blue jeans. So there's got to be like a significance to that.
Yes, and you're welcome to interpret that how you would like.
Okay.
But let me tell you what we decided to do. The story is that Dominic was so careful about how he used the things that belonged to him that he would often walk barefoot in order to save his shoe leather. So our intention with that video was to show Dominic walking beside a contemporary person. It could be anyone. It could be a sister. It could be someone in discernment for vocation. But Dominic walking alongside us throughout the 150-year history of the congregation. And what you see passing under his feet are a small selection of images of the kinds of activities that our sisters engage in, our mission, our ministry, our life together, our prayer.
I love that. And so, talking about, in terms of celebrating your community and your presence in Illinois and, in the USA, can you tell me more about, so I know there's a whole world of Dominicans. I grew up in the Philippines, and so the Dominican high school, I met the Dominican sisters there of a different congregation, however, within that Dominican blanket. And then I also met, because I went to the University of Santo Tomas in Manila for 2 years, so I met there the friars. Can you tell us a little bit more about, like maybe in general, about the Dominican family, and then more specifically the charism and mission of your order, or not order, but so that's the Dominican order, but your congregation.
Sister Lavina, I love so much that you said, tell me about the Dominican family. That shows that you really do understand and know us. And I appreciate that so much. When you said that you were from the Philippines, I knew right away what you were going to say. The Philippines are a country that is deeply steeped in Dominican tradition and culture and mission. So thank you for that. There are the Dominican friars, the Dominican nuns, who were actually the first branch of the order established by Dominic. That would be, today we would think of them as the contemplative nuns. The Dominican laity, of which St. Catherine of Siena was a very prominent.
We lost you a little bit there. Can you tell us? Okay, so we lost you a little bit there for maybe a few seconds, but if you can say something a little bit more. You were talking about Catherine of Siena, and were you saying about the lay Dominicans, or?
Right, yeah, so it would be a whole course to go into everything to talk to you about the different branches of the order, but our way of life, apostolic Dominican congregations like my own, are relatively late comers in the history of Dominican life. The nuns were the first founded by St. Dominic out of necessity. They were women followers who needed shelter, and he provided it for them. Then, after the nuns were established, the friars of the order were established. There were also lay men and women who supported both the nuns and the friars with their agriculture, growing the food that they needed for their ministry. So the laity were involved very, very early in the order's history, all the way back to the 13th century. And then there's actually a branch of the order. They would have in other days been called the Third Order of St. Dominic, or the laity. But the apostolic religious communities developed in the late 19th and early 20th century, like my own congregation. And most of those apostolic congregations of Dominican sisters also have Dominican associates, as we do. We have almost 400 associates of our congregation. So that's the Dominican family. And we all have the initials OP after our name. We are the Order of Preachers That's what Dominic founded.
Mm-hmm.
He founded an order of preachers to spread the good news of the gospel at a time in the history of the world when there was much confusion over what the gospel actually said and meant.
Okay. And then in particular, and which is what we're celebrating, is the 150th anniversary of your community.
Correct. Right. So my own congregation was established in August of 1893 when the bishop of the Diocese of then Alton, now it's Springfield, then it was Alton, requested sisters to serve in a parish in Jacksonville, Illinois, which is about 30 miles down the road from here. And when those sisters left Kentucky on August 17th, 1873, they thought they were going for a 2-year assignment to help establish this school. What they did not realize was the plan from the very beginning was that they would establish a separate congregation of Dominican sisters, and they did not know that for 2 years. So they got a big surprise in the spring of 1875 when they were literally packing their trunks to go back to Kentucky, where they had come from. And the pastor said, "Well, what are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're going home for the summer and we'll be back." And he literally had to get on the train down to Alton and come back with a letter that was written by the superior in Kentucky to the bishop of the diocese explaining that they would be a new foundation. So that was not well communicated to them. This was the first they were hearing of it, and you can imagine the shock of that.
Wow.
So those sisters needed at that moment, they were also presented with a contract from the bishop. So at the same time that Father Mackin is bringing them this letter, he's bringing them this contract that they're expected to sign with the diocese. So they took some time for prayer, and each sister was told that this is an individual decision because this was a long way from home, a long way from Kentucky, and they were making a decision that they did not know they were going to have to make. So the superior said, each one of us herself has to determine how she's going to go forward with this. Are you going back to Kentucky, or are you going to stay here in Jacksonville and meet the needs of a very poor Irish immigrant community in Jacksonville, Illinois? And again, the story ends happily. All of them said yes.
Wow.
And here we are today.
That is so interesting, that history. And I'm so impressed that you must have done this before, because this is the first I'm hearing it. And I think the story of each congregation is always so interesting. Thank you for that, Sister Beth. We're just going to take a little break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about like some of your ministries. And then, like you even have a podcast, and you have this ministry for young adult women. So we'll be right back, and we'll have Sister Beth back with us. Don't go away.
Did I hear you call my name? Here I am, as you will. Speak, my God, I am ready to begin. Here I am, I come to follow you.
Family Self-Sufficiency Program has assisted thousands of single parents who are working to become more self-sufficient through education and employment opportunities. Our experienced case managers accompany participants for up to 5 years on their journey to identify, address, and break down barriers to improving their quality of life and achieving meaningful goals for themselves and for their families. Professional, compassionate assistance is offered in a safe and trusting environment as participants develop the skills needed to become financially stable and able to support themselves. Every achievement starts with a decision to try. To learn more about Catholic Charities Family Self-Sufficiency Program, call 847-782-4233 or visit CatholicCharities.net.
I am a seminarian. The church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
Do you have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
And we are back to Dare to Love show. This is Sister Lavina Pamet. I'm the host. And with us today is Sister Beth Murphy from the Dominican Sisters of Springfield Order of Preachers. And Sister Beth has been telling us a little bit more about their celebration of their 150th anniversary, and a little bit more on, how are all the different aspects of the Dominican family related? And now what I would like to hear from you, Sister Beth, is some of your ministries. And I believe you have I can hear when we were talking before about the anti-racism ministry that you have. So I don't know if you want to start with that or if there's something else, because I know other than the anti-racism ministry, you have other ones. So I know so far you also have a podcast, and then you have a ministry with young adult women who want to deepen their spirituality. So do you want to start with the anti-racism team first?
Could do that. We, like many religious communities, when we were established 150 years ago, it was for teaching. And we eventually also embarked on healthcare ministry. But as the history of the country has grown, Catholic sisters, women religious, built the church in the United States when this was an immigrant country, right? We built the institutions, the orphanages, the schools, the hospitals, the social centers, and those are built. That work is done. And so always our goal is to try to find the thing that God is calling us to do. What is the need today? And that's really how we became involved with anti-racism work. And it started, I would say, let's say 30 years ago, when some of our sisters got engaged with an effort here in Springfield to provide adequate housing for people who were impoverished by situations in their lives. And it was while they were working on that housing project that they began to understand that we weren't just talking about housing, but we were talking about systemic injustices that privileged white people and that disadvantaged people of color. And that awareness led to the development of our anti-racism team, which has been going a little over 20 years now. And our goal is to help dismantle the privilege that we have as white people. Mm-hmm. To be able to see it at all is one of the biggest challenges that we have, because we live in a system that is designed to prevent us from seeing our privilege. So beginning to dismantle that has made us aware of the need for partners in that ministry, that white persons who have the privilege cannot dismantle it without partnership with people of color who have experienced it. And so that has been a deep commitment of the congregation for about 20 years now. What we're really doing, and if you try to step back from that and look at the big picture, is that we're trying to understand that Jesus came to dismantle the abuses of power that existed in the world. And so one of those abuses of power is a system that privileges some people and disadvantages others. That same abuse of power, it also allows people to have power over and control over the goods of the earth. And we see where that has gotten us, right?
Right.
We're suffering from climate change and the abuse of the resources and the goods of the earth that God has given us. So that's another one of our big commitments. And we, like many women's religious communities, are on board with Pope Francis's Laudato Si action platform. Laudato Si being the name of the document that Pope Francis issued about the concern of climate change, global climate change, and its impact on all systems of Earth itself, but also human systems, our economic and our political systems. So we are very engaged with that as well. And our congregation has a beautiful place. If you're ever in Springfield, you must come and see us at Jubilee Farm. 163 some acres of land that is set aside on the west side of Springfield, a place of peace and respite for Earth and the people who go there to share it. And it's just a wonderful place. I often make my annual retreat at Jubilee Farm. People are welcome to come and walk the trails. There is a guest house where you can stay for a few days if you're looking for a little R&R. There's a meeting room that you can host activities and meetings in. I hear it gets used pretty regularly for, family events when they need a little bigger space than they have around their own dining room table. So that is all a part of our commitment to the earth and Earth's resources. We are still educating in so many ways. Through our anti-racism work, we are educating. Through Jubilee Farm, we are educating. We still sponsor 3 high schools, one of them in the Chicago Archdiocese. Marian Catholic High School is our school. Sacred Heart Griffin High School here in Springfield is under our sponsorship. And Rosary High School, an all-girls school in Aurora, Illinois. So we are still supporting and engaging in those missions. We have many sisters who work on the pastoral level, providing direct support to people in their parishes, their families, grief counseling. We have sisters who are still in the classroom, some that are tutoring, and some that are classroom teachers. In Peru, our sisters are working with the youth in the mountains up in Harpa. In Lima, providing healthcare and animating Christian small base communities of Christian people. So those things are all going on. We used to sponsor St. Dominic's Hospital in Jackson. We turned that sponsorship over to a wonderful group of Franciscan sisters, the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady, but we still have, I'll lose count, but 6 or 7 of our sisters are still working at St. Dominic's in healthcare ministry there. So we are involved in all of those things.
And then, so you also have a podcast where you are able. So how can people tune in? What's the name of your podcast again? Can you remind me, Sister Beth?
The podcast is called Flowcast, Flow. And for us, that's an acronym because what we use, there is a Latin phrase that appears on the mosaic in our chapel, which is Pro Mundi Vita, for the life of the world. And Jesus has offered himself for the life of the world, and we are to imitate Jesus and do the same thing. So we use that as our tagline for the community, for the life of the world. So FLOW is an acronym for the life of the world. So we call it Flowcast.
I love
that. And
that.
we have a website, Flowcast Listen
Flowcastlisten.org.
.org.
Okay.
We're just
Flowcastlisten.org.
getting ready to gear up for our third season. So in keeping with all things Springfield Dominican, we launched the podcast on the Thursday closest to our anniversary date in 20, let's see, this is 2023. So in 2021, when we started the podcast, August 19th happened to be a Thursday, and we decided, well, we're just going to launch it that day. So that's
great.
what we did. And then we run the podcast series from August till the end of December. And we try to talk to people who, like us, are trying to make a difference in the world, to create hope for people where there might not be any hope. And I have to tell you, doing the podcast has been one of my most favorite things to do.
That's wonderful.
I have a wonderful team that I work with here in the communications office. Sometimes I host, sometimes others of our sisters will be guest hosts. Sometimes our sisters are the guests on the show, and we talk about their particular ministries. So you never know who might show up there. We've had alums from some of our schools and associates and all kinds of wonderful guests. So I would really recommend, there's 2 seasons up there on the website for you to look at now. And then in late August, we'll start season 3.
Great. Sister Beth, guess what? We're at the end of our show. But before you go, I just want to thank you so much and your community for being a guest on our show. And before we go, if you could do the closing prayer, which is called the Dominican blessing, would that be possible? And then we'll show a little bit more of those who are listening will hear the music from your 150th anniversary. And on YouTube, people who are watching will see a little bit more of that video we showed at the beginning.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yes, I want very much to close with this 13th century prayer that speaks so much to the life, mission, and ministry of all of us who are associated with St. Dominic and the Order of Preachers. May God the Father bless us. May God the Son heal us. May God the Holy Spirit enlighten us and give us eyes to see with, ears to hear with, hands to do the work of God with, feet to walk with, a mouth to preach the word of salvation with, and the angel of peace to watch over us and lead us at last by our Lord's gift to the kingdom.
Amen. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thanks again, Sister Beth. May God bless everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, Sister Lavina.
Until next time.
It's been a joy being with you. Went too fast.